How are you guys doing? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, live today on April 15th with another round of NFL stories and topics that happened over the weekend and some breaking news that happened today, referencing the episode from Friday. To start off today's show, we're going to talk about DeVonta Smith's new contract extension with the Philadelphia Eagles that was announced today. Then later in the show, we're going to talk about Jared Goff's latest comments about his time in the Detroit Lions organization, how he's reflected on the trade and all the good that he's experienced, but also some of the negative that he has seen as well as the Detroit Lions quarterback. Then, to wrap up the show later on, some comments Joe Burrow made, updating everyone on his wrist injury, talking about the taunting rule, and talking about the matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs, that rivalry that's sort of been brewing over the last few years. All of that on today's episode. Stick around. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And before I start on the first segment, I want to remind you guys, as I always do, if you have any questions or comments during today's show, please use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net, that you see on your screen with any of your questions or comments. Using that link makes it able for me to see your question pop up in the chat box. I can read it on air, and we can carry on the conversation that way, maybe take it in a different direction. It's more engaging, more entertaining, I think, and it's a big help for the show. So again, if you're able to use that link, the tip and donations link with GSMCPodcast.net, it would be a big help for this show and all the shows across the network. We always thank you guys greatly whenever you guys are able to use that with your questions or comments. But that being said, like I mentioned, we sort of predicted something happening with DeVonta Smith. Well, not necessarily DeVonta Smith, but last week on Friday or Thursday, I mentioned the Antoine Winfield deal that was brewing, that was getting close, according to Adam Schefter. And I said that these sort of deals usually happen over the weekend, leading into the following week. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get this extension done this past weekend. I was sort of right. Kind of connects to this. DeVonta Smith extension happened today. This morning, the news broke. So I was kind of in the ballpark there a little bit, predicting it. I didn't mention DeVonta Smith, but I wasn't too far off because on Friday, specifically that day, I talked about the Eagles now targeting DeVonta Smith and trying to get an extension done with him. I didn't think it would happen this quickly, in all honesty. Just on Friday, I talked about it being close, and then today the news broke. He signs a new 3-year, $75 million deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, $51 million being guaranteed. It was also announced today that the Eagles will exercise his 5th-year option. So, DeVonta Smith is still on his rookie deal. This year will be his final year on his rookie contract, 2024. Then 2025, it will be the 5th-year option year. He will be guaranteed $15.6 million on that 5th-year option. And then in 2026 is when this new contract starts to count against the salary cap and in the Philadelphia Eagles books. A great deal. It's, now that I'm saying it out loud, it's pretty outstanding how they managed to do this and plan it out, because it just extends him with this new 3-year deal and the 5th-year option and everything like that. It keeps him another 4 years, 5 years, technically, if you count 2024, with this new deal and the 5th-year option. It keeps him with the Eagles until 2028, and that's huge. The Eagles, I mentioned, have a history, a good reputation of signing their star players, especially if they drafted them. Not necessarily that they don't do it with the players they sign as free agents or trade, but they usually really value their players that they scouted, got to know, groomed them since they were drafted into the star player like DeVonta Smith is. It really shows you how much they value those picks, how much they value those players. And it's always great for other players to see if they think about coming to the Eagles that they don't mess around with things like this. They want to make sure their players stay with them as long as possible. I'm sure it's a reason why Saquon, while talking with Howie Roseman and the Eagles, really liked it. I'm sure they gave him the number, and they seemed very serious about extension talks, contract negotiations, and that's always a great thing for organizations like the Eagles. And on that, I mentioned the longevity on DeVonta Smith's contract and how really well worked this was. DeVonta Smith is only 25 years old. I'm not sure if he just turned 25 or if he's going to turn 26, but thinking about down the road, this keeps him until around when he's 28, 29 years old. And that's amazing, like I mentioned, for a number of reasons. You keep him really on like a 5-year deal if you think about it, starting from now until 2028. He's only 25 years old, like I mentioned, drafted back in 2021 as the 10th overall pick, had great years, just finished his third year with the Eagles this last season, another very solid, pretty outstanding year for DeVonta Smith. 80 receptions, over 1,000 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Had a great rookie year, broke a few of the Eagles' rookie receiving records in that year. Then they trade for A.J. Brown, make a run at the Super Bowl. This year is a bit more down, but still, DeVonta Smith is a consistent presence in their offense. Safe to say he's not the reason why they've been struggling. It's really mostly been on the defensive side of the ball. So they make sure they keep around this consistency for the foreseeable future. And the media asked DeVonta Smith about this back in February, with this extension eligibility coming into effect in this month, or it was in March. I'm not quite sure of it, but they asked him about it back in February. And his quote, he didn't seem too worried about it. He seemed pretty unbothered by it when he said, "Let the chips fall where they fall. When the time comes, it comes. I'm not necessarily focused on it." And it was good that he wasn't. This all worked out well. Quicker, I'm sure, than most people expected. Definitely more earlier than I expected with the Eagles and how they re-signed all of their players, really all their big-name players, just midway through April before the draft. Now they could focus on that next process of their draft players, trying to sign them to rookie deals, and so on and so on. They also get to focus on off-season workouts and everything like that, which I'm going to get into later in this show. But it's a great deal, again, for the Eagles. I can't stress that enough. And into the finer details of the deal, DeVonta Smith will earn $25 million per year. Like we sort of predicted, ballparked it before on Friday, what we could anticipate, what was being said around the league, what sort of contract the Eagles could agree with him, and it is $25 million per year, the same as A.J. Brown's deal, but he signed a 4-year, $100 million deal. DeVonta Smith's is 1 year less, same amount per year, which means that the Eagles now have 2 of the top 5 highest paid wide receivers in terms of average per year. The only receivers that make more than those 2, the Eagles receivers, are Tyreek Hill, who leads everybody at $30 million, Devontae Adams, second at $28 million per year, and then Cooper Kupp in third at $26.7 million per year. And that doesn't really matter right now when you look at it, but looking long term, this is one of the biggest points I wanted to make, was that with this deal, essentially being almost like a 5-year deal, it says 3 years, $75 million, but with the last year of the rookie deal, the 5th-year option, plus the 3 other years, you get them on a 5-year period for $25 million per year, which seems, like I mentioned, a lot because he is top 5 right now. But if you're looking down the line with the contract extensions of Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, you have Jamar Chase coming up pretty soon. Brandon Ayuk's going to want another one. Nico Collins is a sneaky one. He won't make top 5, top 8 money, but he's another contract extension that has to get done sooner rather than later. By getting Smith now on this 5-year period, it looks expensive right now, but looking down the line, 2 years, 3 years, this might look like a bargain in 2027, 2028, when you're looking at these outstanding numbers, potentially over $30 million, with guys like Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. How the Eagles work this in right now, it's very good business for them. It's very well worked. a genius move by them to sign it right now. And now they have DeVonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, and Jake Elliott, their kicker. We still show love to the kickers, all under contract until or through 2028. Saquon Barkley also just signed, so he's under contract, I want to say, until 2027 or 2028 also. I think it's 2027, but regardless, he also just signed a new deal with them. So he is another name on that list. And now, like I mentioned before, to wrap this all up, you get this out of the way. You get moving with other things you have to handle, like a new offensive coordinator coming in, Kellen Moore coming in from the Los Angeles Chargers to be their offensive coordinator, formerly of the Chargers, before that with the Dallas Cowboys. So there is some familiarity there between Moore and the Eagles, just seeing him twice every year. Now he's their offensive coordinator, and you don't have contract talks circling around everybody's heads, all these other players being asked about it. You get all that stuff out of the way. You can focus on football, and you can focus on trying to get this offense to look as high-powered as it did last year, and even more so in 2022. Now that you can only focus on football, and you've tied down some of your biggest stars on offense to move on even before the draft, which is huge. I mentioned it's great that they got it done before the other big-name wide receivers. And more than that, it's just the way that the Eagles do it, just execution, efficiency with them. It doesn't get lost with them or anybody in the organization. And now it really just puts, I don't want to say pressure, but all the attention now is just solely on football. They began their offseason program today, so getting everybody back in the building, starting to talk football, starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's going to go a lot smoother, and it's going to seem a lot clearer now that everybody is there to stay until 2028, 2027 with some of their best players, and it's a great way to do it. And now we'll see how this offense goes, how it matures, how it develops over the next few months. Football's a long way away, but it all starts now, trying to get integrated with everybody. It's a good thing for the Eagles, and kudos to them for getting it done. We'll see how it all materializes down the line and heading into the draft. They have a big pick coming up, so we'll keep our eyes on that as well. But in saying that, we'll leave that topic there. But there's a lot more to come on today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. After the break, I'm going to get into that same topic. The rest of the NFL starting their spring workout programs here today. I'm going to get into 3 teams that I wanted to zone in on and talk about heading into the rest of this offseason, looking into the draft, and what they need to address after the draft or during the draft to potentially have more success in 2024. So stick around for that. More stories coming up on today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.